Tom Sowell has a gift, much like Walter Williams, who I consider a very great man and thinker and a friend. And that is the ability to take complicated issues and put them out in a logical and concise way, which is what I try to do here as well. But Tom Sowell at Real Clear Politics, he says today, those who see hope in the Middle East uprisings seem to assume that they will lead in the direction of freedom or democracy. There's already talk about the liberation, quote-unquote, of Egypt, even though the biggest change there has been that a one-man dictatorship has been replaced by a military dictatorship that has suspended the Constitution. Perhaps the military dictatorship will be temporary, as its leaders say, but we've heard that song before. What we've also heard too many times before is the assumption that getting rid of an undemocratic government means it will be replaced by a freer and better government. I hope Heather McDonald is listening. I know she hangs on my every word. Who's that, Mark? Don't worry about it. History says otherwise. After Russia's czars were replaced by the communists, the government executed more people in a day than the czars had executed in half a century. It was much the same story in Cuba when the Batista regime was replaced by Castro, and in Iran when the Shah was replaced by the Ayatollahs. It is not inevitable that bad regimes are replaced by worse regimes, but it has happened too often for us to blithely assume that overthrowing a dictator means a movement toward freedom and democracy. The fact that Egyptians or others in the Middle East and elsewhere want freedom does not mean that they are ready for freedom. Everybody wants freedom for himself. Even the Nazis wanted to be free to be Nazis. They just didn't want anybody else to be free. There's very little sign of tolerance in the Middle East, even among fellow Muslims with different political or religious views, and all too many signs of gross intolerance toward people who are not Muslims. Freedom and democracy cannot be simply conferred on anyone. Both have preconditions. And even nations that are free and democratic today took centuries to get there. If there was ever a time when people in Western democracies might be excused for thinking that Western institutions could simply be exported to other nations to create new free democracies, that time has long passed. It is easy to export the outward symbols of democracy, constitutions, elections, parliaments, and the like, but you cannot export the centuries of experience and development that made those institutions work. All too often, exported democratic institutions have meant one man, one vote, one time. It's a phrase you're hearing a lot lately. We should not assume that our freedom and democratic form of government can be taken for granted. Those who created this country did not. As the Constitution of the United States was being written, a lady asked Benjamin Franklin what he and the other writers were creating. He famously replied, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." Generations later, Abraham Lincoln also posed it as a question, whether the government of the people, by the people, and for the people is one that can long endure. Just as there are nations who've not yet developed the preconditions for freedom and democracy, so there are some, that is, some people within a nation who have not. The advance toward universal suffrage took place slowly and in stages. Too many people looking back today see that as just being biased against some people. But putting the fate of a nation in the hands of the illiterate masses of the past, many with no conception of the complexities of government, might have meant risking the same fate as one man, one vote, one time. Mark, I want to comment briefly here. This is why assimilation is so crucial for immigrants in this country. This is why one language, official language, is so crucial. So people become literate in English so they can understand the characteristic of the nation and the principles that hold it together. It's not because of discrimination or being biased against this group or that group. It's so our society doesn't fall to pieces. Back to Tom Sowell. Today we take universal literacy for granted. But literacy has not been universal across all segments of the American population during all the 20th century. Illiteracy was the norm in Albania as recently as the 1920s, and in India in the second half of the 20th century. Bare literacy is just one of the things needed to make democracy viable. Without a sense of responsible citizenship, voters can elect leaders who are not merely incompetent or corrupt, but even leaders with contempt for the constitutional limits on governmental power that preserve the people's freedom. Mark again. We've made this point here many, many, many times. When poor, illegal immigrants come into this country who are illiterate, they are subject to the demagoguery of the left, of ethnic front groups, of political hacks who promise them the world, and yet there's no comprehension of our constitutional system of limited government and of any of it because of language barriers and because of illiteracy. Once again, that's why this is a crucial issue, which even Republican governors in blue states need to address if they hope to be president one day. Thomas Sowell ends it this way. He says, "We already have such a leader in the White House, and a succession of such leaders may demonstrate that the viability of freedom and democracy can by no means be taken for granted here." What kind of leader? One without a sense of responsible citizenship, he wrote before, and so forth. And he's right. We've reached a point in this country. Mark, you're so acerbic. Mark, you're so negative. No, it's not me, ladies and gentlemen. Don't shoot the messenger. It's not me. Look around. I personally am a very positive person. But then again, you look at the government, you look at what's going on, it's troubling. It's scary. Mike in Annapolis, Maryland, listening on the great WMAL, the capital of Maryland. Yes, Mike.
Hey, Mr. Levin, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. It says here you're an independent. How old are you, sir?
I'm 55 years old.
And you haven't figured out what you are yet, eh?
It allows me to vote which way I feel I should vote. Mostly I vote Republican, and that's not just because I'm talking to you, but I like to vote Republican. I like the conservative attitude, and I love our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say that about I work for the federal government, says my wife. I've worked for 15 years for the federal government, and we're in a union. And I think there's a lot of union bashing going on. We don't make $150,000 between the two of us. We leave work in the morning at 8 o'clock, and with the commute, we come home at night at about 8 o'clock.
How much do you pay? How much do you pay toward your health care?
My health care, but for the both of us, we pay $613 per month.
Toward your health care. How much toward your pension?
Pension is around $340, $350.
Yeah, but that's on a scale. You can choose how much you want to contribute based on what kind of pension you want to have.
Well, at my age, Mr. Levin, I can choose whatever I want up to the point of, I think, $22,600, of which
but my point is you choose to pay the $300 because when you retire, you want a better pension benefit.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, but I want people to understand this, that it's not like somebody's holding a gun to your head either. You can contribute. Hold on, I want to explain things. You can contribute less or you can contribute more. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well,
so you and your wife pay it's $600 a month for you and your wife and your family.
Oops, I can't say that. We got never mind. But yes, it's that much.
Okay, but you chose Blue Cross Blue Shield, right?
Well, yes, I did. Absolutely. I thought it was the best plan out there. And,
all right, now we got to slow down. So you have, as a federal employee, a long list of options, don't you?
I have.
Hold on now. The answer is yes, you do.
I sound like a liberal, don't I? 20 years before that, and I worked in the car business and had just as many choices.
No. Listen to me. I worked 8 years in the Reagan administration as a political appointee, and in no job in the private sector did I have just as many choices. None.
Well, it was close, but I would have to agree with you that there are more choices.
And in addition, I could have put, I don't remember at the time, but it was a huge percentage. I could have paid, it was 7 or 8% of my paycheck into a pension plan and get an unbelievable pension if I stayed in the government for a certain period of time, and that was never my plan. Correct?
That is very correct.
All right, so that does not really exist in the private sector, either of those.
But I also work for those benefits, as does my wife.
Nobody says you're a welfare recipient. What we're saying is that those of us who don't work in the federal government just can't afford this all the time anymore.
Well, oh boy, I don't know about that, but I would just say that it's my choice to do that. Again, it's everybody's choice. It's survival of the fittest, Mr.
No, it's not my choice. I have no choice over what you do whatsoever.
Correct. But it's, again, survival of the fittest, and everyone can choose to work for the federal government, or everyone can choose
Okay, which is exactly why survival of the fittest, I want politicians who will go to Washington and slash the size of government.
As do I.
Well, no, you don't. You want them to slash somebody else, not you.
Oh, no. I'll tell you what. There's been, $72,000 a year on Washington.
Sir, there are janitors who earn a lot less than you, okay? If we shut down the Department of Education, that includes people who earn $158,000 a year. at the SES level, and also the janitor in the basement who earns, 30% of what you do.
Why aren't we pulling our troops home from Afghanistan?
All right, there we go. Yeah, you're a conservative. I'll tell you why, sir. That's called national security. And I hear this argument from paper pushers all the time, comparing themselves to our soldiers. Well, let me tell you something, Mike. I don't. Thank you for your call, not. It's stunning to me how low the liberals will go. Some young guy over there in Afghanistan facing the barbarians from hell from the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries, putting his or her life on the line, leaving their families here at home. No, I don't compare that to you, pal. Now, if I hadn't walked through what his benefits are, ladies and gentlemen, you wouldn't have known, because he wasn't about to reveal it. So I revealed it. And no, I'm not bashing every federal employee. That would be stupid. But I believe our government needs to be cut by 20% at every level. 20%. It's too damn big. And it's doing things that are not authorized under the Constitution. And yes, we have to make choices. You've got two people there working for the federal government. Him and his wife. I have nothing against those folks. I know nothing about those folks. But he says he's a conservative and he favors cutting government. Well, he may be a conservative, but he favors cutting somebody else's job. And this, of course, becomes the quagmire, does it not? They keep hiring people, they keep expanding these bureaucracies, and you're dealing with real human beings, families. And so when you want to cut back, you're having to cut back real human beings and families. But then I look in my neighborhood, literally. After this program, I'll take my Pepsi, that's my dog, go outside and walk, and within 2 houses, there's 4 for sale. 4. Most of these people are trying to downsize. They're trying to get out. They're being strangled by this economy. They're being strangled by decisions that are being made that they have no influence over. And the bottom line is, sir, this is a government that is supposed to represent the people. The bottom line, sir, is that we do not exist to pay you. That's the harsh reality. That's the harsh reality. And there's one more bottom line. The system is going to collapse. And when the system collapses, we all go. Who brought us to the brink? Who did this? The liberals. They brought us to this. If you read Liberty and Tyranny, and if you go to the end of the hardback cover and you see the Conservative Manifesto, I explain in there, believe it or not, that these things are going to have to be done, including the public sector unions and the teacher union. They're going to have to be contained, not just them, but other aspects of our society too, like redistributing wealth through welfare payment. They're going to have to be contained and reversed. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
One of the easiest ways to begin cutting the size of the federal government is through attrition. That is, as people retire or leave, you don't fill their positions. Why don't we try that for a couple of years? I don't know what percentage of cuts that would be, but somebody could figure that out. But that's not even on the table. We'll be right back.
They call him Mr. Right, Mr. Conservative, and Mr. Constitution. But you can call him Mark at 877-381-3811.
Emily in Michigan, 12 years old. How are you, Emily?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
I was calling about that earlier segment about Michelle Obama telling all these kids about childhood obesity.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Ever since she has been in the White House, she looks like she gained 30 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my gosh, I cannot stand one more word of that woman.
Oh, my goodness.
Every time I see her on that TV, I just want to shut the TV off and throw it out.
Okay. Well, Emily, 12 years old, you sound much more mature than that. Thank you for your call. I don't think that's true. I don't think she's gained 30 pounds. No way. No way.